Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming out today. So today we're going to talk about self-reflection and how self-reflection can help you to provide a more inclusive classroom. Okay. So first I'm going to start with an introduction, and because we're using the diversity-informed tenets for this, and I'm going to go over that in a minute, I'm going to start with a little bit of my kind of how I identify, because that's part of what we're looking at when we're doing self-reflection. So I'm a white cis female, and I'm born in the US. I'm a monolingual English speaker, and I'm able-bodied. I identify as neurotypical, and I'm a single mother with 2 children. I come from a working class family on the East Coast. I'm the first person to graduate from college in my family. And I started as a preschool teacher for many years before becoming a therapist. So these are sort of all of the pieces that to me are really important parts of my identity that I really connect with and are important parts of what I utilize and think about when I'm reflecting on things. So when we're talking about self-reflection, we're talking about your thoughts, your cultural background, your feelings, your experiences, your values, your beliefs. And the reason that we're talking about this is because it encourages you to be curious and respectful and slow down and kind of take your time with things before you're stepping in and moving forward with the children in your care. It helps you to build stronger relationships and build more inclusive classrooms. Why is this important? I think you guys all know why this is important, but creating inclusive learning spaces begins with understanding ourselves. And this is really important because we want to pay attention to the fact that there's a lot of unconscious bias, there's cultural lenses, there's so many things that we bring into the classroom that we need to be aware of so that we can have conversations with families that take into account both our perspective and the family's perspective so that we can have conversations that are respectful and open and can encourage dialogue with families and make more inclusive conversations. So the training that we're going to do today is going to explore how your identity, your values, these pieces shape your interactions with children and families. We're going to use the diversity-informed tenets for works with infants, children and families, and all of these are going to be available for you online. Yeah, so the slides will be available for you. We also have them translated into Spanish for you, and the diversity-informed tenets are there. But I'm going to go over them with you so that you're aware of what I'm talking about. Has anyone heard of the diversity-informed tenets, or is this new? A couple of people? Okay. So the tenets are a set of strategies and tools for strengthening the capacity of professionals to work with diverse systems and families. And the reason that I really like them is because it's a tool that you use to help you reflect on what you're bringing into the room, as opposed to this is how this family is, or this is how these cultural groups act, or it's not an approach that is coming from an expert perspective. It's a perspective that is saying, what am I bringing into the room when I'm working with a family, and how can I be aware of those things so that I can have more respectful conversations and create a space where everyone feels welcome. So this is the first one, and we're going to come back to this one. This one is my favorite one, and it's also, I think, the most helpful one in terms of the work that everyone's doing with families. So self-awareness leads to better services for families. And I'm just going to read it out loud to you just to make sure everyone can hear it. Working with infants, children, and families requires all individuals, organizations, and systems of care to reflect on our own culture, values, and beliefs, and the impact that racism, classism, sexism, ableism, homophobia, xenophobia, and other systems of oppression have had on our lives in order to provide diversity-informed, culturally attuned services. So this is the central principle around this, around self-reflection and being aware of what you bring into the room and your own experience. Tenet number 2 is to champion children's rights globally. Infants and children are citizens of the world, and the global community is responsible for supporting parents and caregivers, families, and local communities in welcoming, protecting, and nurturing them. Tenet number 3 is work to acknowledge privilege and combat discrimination. Discriminatory practices and policies that harm adults harm the infants and children in their care. Privilege constitutes injustice. Diversity-informed practitioners acknowledge privilege where we hold it and use it strategically and responsibly. We combat racism, classism, sexism, ableism, homophobia, xenophobia, and other systems of oppression within ourselves, our practices, and our fields. This is a lot of information. Again, it's online for you too to go back over. Number 4 is to recognize and respect non-dominant bodies of knowledge. This one I think is especially important in preschool classrooms when you have a very diverse group of families, because they're coming in with a lot of different experiences and a lot of different ideas of what's helpful within their family. Diversity-informed practice recognizes that non-dominant ways of knowing, bodies of knowledge, sources of strength, and roots to healing within all families and communities. Honor diverse family structures. Families decide who's included and how they are structured. No particular family constellation or organization is inherently optimal compared to any other. Diversity-informed practice recognizes and strives to counter the historical bias towards idealizing and conversely blaming biological mothers while overlooking the critical child-rearing contributions of other parents and caregivers, including second mothers, fathers, kin, and felt family, adoptive parents, foster parents, and early care and educational providers. Number 6 is understanding that language can hurt or heal. Diversity-informed practice recognizes the power of language to divide or connect, denigrate or celebrate, hurt or heal. We strive to use language, including body language, imagery, and other modes of nonverbal communication in ways that most inclusively support all children and their families, caregivers, and communities. Number 7, support families in their preferred language. Families are both supported in facilitating infants and children's development and mental health services when available in their native languages. Number 8 is allocate resources toward system change. Diversity and inclusion must be proactively considered when doing any work with or behalf of infants, children, and families. Resource allocation includes time, money, additional and alternative practices, and other supports and accommodations. Otherwise, system of oppression may be inadvertently reproduced. Individuals, organizations, and systems of care need ongoing opportunities for reflection in order to identify implicit bias, remove barriers, and work to dismantle the root cause of disparity and inequity. Tenet number 9 is make space and open pathways. Infant, child, and family serving workforces are most dynamic and effective when historically and currently marginalized individuals and groups have equitable access to a wide range of roles, disciplines, and modes of practice and influence. And the final one is that advancing policy that supports all families. Diversity-informed practitioners consider the impact of policy and legislation on all people and advance a just and equitable policy agenda for and with families. So I just read you a ton of stuff, and there's a lot in there to kind of tease apart, but I wanted you to know what these are because we're going to use some of these to kind of reflect on a vignette in this slide so that you can kind of get a sense of like what exactly is it that we're talking about. So this is sort of a vignette. This is not a real child, but this is a child that kind of is a somewhat typical child that would be coming into your program. And Mateo is a 4-year-old Latino boy who lives with his parents and 2 older siblings. His family speaks Spanish at home, and his father drops him off most mornings. Mateo often enters the classroom full of energy, moving quickly, talking loudly, and heading straight for the sensory bins or block area. He sometimes skips the morning greeting routine and answers in a way that feels unexpected. You've noticed that transitions can be especially tough for him, and while you want him to feel welcome, it can be hard to know how much to step in or when to give him space. Some days, after reminders or redirection, Mateo plays calmly on his own. Other days, he seems out of sync with the rest of the group. You genuinely care about Mateo and you want to support him, but you find yourself feeling unsure and sometimes wondering if you're missing something important. So if we're using the diversity-informed tenets, and on everyone's table, there's a kind of a handout that gives you a list of some reflection questions. And it's a little postcard. And each of these ones that I have laid out here are based on each one of the tenets that I just read to you. And so if we're looking at this, I'm going to kind of switch back and forth. Hopefully it doesn't make everybody dizzy. But the first part would be, how does my experience differ from that of the family? And when you're thinking about that, if I'm looking at this, I would say, okay, I'm looking at it and I'm monolingual English speaker. This is a child who speaks Spanish at home. We're looking at all of the ways that my identity, what I've sort of gone over in the beginning, where are the places that those are similar, where are the places those are different, and how do I keep in mind some of those things so that I can have conversations with the family or understand what's happening and be aware of what I'm bringing into the room. Number 2, am I creating a welcoming space for all children and families? So I might want to look at it and think, what is the sensory bin and block area like? What's my morning routine like? Is this a space where all of the children have an opportunity for where they can go if they're not going to be participating in this activity? Like, is this space inclusive for all of the children? What privileges do I have that I can use on behalf of this family? Would be number 3. So if I'm looking at this, I might sort of say, like, I have a lot of experience navigating the system of how to get families support. This family may or may not have those things. That's a particular privilege that I have that I can use on behalf of this family to be able to share with them. Here's some things that I have experience navigating that they might not have experience navigating, and how can I use that to help them through this process? Number 4 is, what does this family's culture tell them about this child? So I would want to ask the family about this. What is it that they're seeing in their child's behavior? Are these behaviors that they're seeing concerning to them? Are they happening at home? Is this something that they think is a positive thing? Do they have concerns about it? There's so many different things that a family can think about this or not have thought about, that it's important to really have the conversation with the family to say, like, what does this behavior mean to you? The 5th question is, am I welcoming and including all the important people in this child's life? So if his father's dropping him off most mornings, I might want to wonder, am I including everyone in his family? Do I know who he lives with? Am I including mom, grandma, auntie, whomever is involved in this child's life? I want to make sure that I'm including all of them when I'm trying to figure out what's happening with this child and what kind of support they might need. Number 6, what am I communicating to this family verbally, visually, and non-verbally? Am I making the space that I have in my classroom and my program one that is welcoming to, as an example, to fathers? Do I have only pictures of mothers and their children in my classroom, or do I also have pictures of fathers and their children? Am I trying to have ways to greet them in the morning that are more aligned with their family and what might make them feel more comfortable? Number 7, am I making efforts to support them in their preferred language? So do I have things available so that if, as I mentioned, I'm monolingual English speaking, I know maybe, a few words in Spanish, but I could probably greet a family in the morning in Spanish. I might be able to ask a few questions. Am I making a reasonable effort to do that? And if I can't do that, am I finding a way to maybe have some of my sign-in sheets translated so that it says in English and in Spanish? Like, am I making all of the efforts so that this family can feel welcomed into my classroom? This one is sometimes a little tricky, number 9, but am I working on my relationships with my colleagues in a way that supports mutual development? This one is a little tricky just because it's a little complicated, but what we're asking is, like, are you working with your colleagues in a way that supports you to both learn how to do these things? Are you sharing the resources in the classroom? Are you sharing your knowledge and resource so that if you know something about this family, are you sharing that information with your colleagues that there's something going on with the family, or maybe the child didn't sleep very well and you have a good relationship with the dad, he tells you, do you tell your colleagues those things so that everybody knows this information and there's a supportive and collective relationship amongst all of the people that you're working with? And then number 10 would be, how can I use my voice as an agent of change in this situation? So there's a couple of different areas here that we might have some concerns, where we might want to say this child needs some extra support in the classroom, or maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. We don't necessarily know. And so I can use my voice to talk to the parents and have a conversation around what I'm seeing, what I think he might benefit from, what he might need a little bit more support with. That's really using my knowledge as a preschool teacher, having a lot of experience with children, to be able to get the child the support that they need and to support the family to know that. And I'm kind of going through all of these reflection steps to get to a place so that when I have that conversation with the parent, I'm not approaching the parent by saying, like, I have this concern and your child needs this help, but I'm saying, I kind of have an idea about what the family's idea of support is, whether or not that's helpful, whether or not the family will interpret that as a sign that there's a problem. I've built a relationship with them. I'm aware of some of the places where I might be different or similar with this family. So it really helps to make it so that when you're having that conversation with the family, they're more receptive to what you have to say and they're more open to kind of understanding what it is that you're talking about. So this is tenet number 1. This one's my favorite one because I think it's really helpful around self-reflection. And these questions are really important because there's a lot of things that come up in a preschool classroom that we're not always aware are happening. They're not necessarily the things that are happening in the classroom of, how are children walking inside and outside of the classroom to go to the play area, but they're the things that are happening between who are you paying attention to for problems, who are you offering the most support to. It helps you to be aware as a preschool teacher, what are you doing for the children in your classroom? Are you offering more support to certain children rather than other children? Are you giving everyone the kind of support that they need? Are you altering yourself in order to be what a child needs in your classroom? So some of the first ones are, how do you identify in terms of race, class, sex, ability, sexuality, and culture? These are really important ones because you want to make sure that you're aware of what you represent when you're talking to the families, that different people talking to the families are going to bring different things into that conversation, that I need to be aware of what I'm bringing into that. What aspects of my identity do I hold most closely? So as you're kind of reflecting on these things, it might be like, I was a preschool teacher for many years. I hold that as a very important part of my identity. I believe that the culture of having your child in a preschool is a positive thing, that's a bias that I hold. Not everyone holds that bias. So if I'm talking to a family about what their child needs to be successful in preschool, I might want to be aware that I hold a bias that preschool is helpful for children. So being able to have those conversations and reflecting on that. How might my experience impact the way I understand children and families? This one, I think, I'm sort of giving examples as we go, and on this one of the things that I think about a lot is that I was raised for a long time by a single father, so I have a lot of different ideas about what fathers might do or need to do with their kids than some of my colleagues have in other situations where I might expect different things from them or have more of a bias towards their interactions with their kids or want to give them more support, whereas other colleagues are giving more support to moms or whatever it might be. But being aware of your experience helps with that. What systems of oppression have I had experiences with, and how have they affected me? This one is really important because this can be both a positive thing and a negative thing. If you have experience navigating a system because you have been oppressed by that system and have had to figure out how to get through it, that can be really positive where you can help a family to learn how to navigate that system. But it also might mean that that system triggers you and you might need a little help trying to figure out how to help that family get through that system without the system making you upset on behalf of that family. So being aware of those things is important. Which children or families do I feel most connected to and which do I struggle with? This one's super important because it comes up a lot around which children do you spend the most time with and which are the children that you tend to avoid. Do you tend to really like the sassy girls or do you really like the active boys or the active girls and the sassy boys? I mean, whatever it is, which children are you most attracted to spending your time with and which are the children that you tend to avoid? Being aware of those things can help you to think about what is the experience for the child that you're avoiding and how do they understand why you're doing that? How do my own childhood experiences show up in my teaching? The place that I see this coming up the most is really around how strict teachers can sometimes be in the classroom or what the expectations can be in the classroom based on kind of how you were raised or what the expectations were of you as a child, and trying to find a way to come up with a place that would be kind of a happy medium. What works for this child? What works for this family that takes into account your own experience and also what the child's experience is? What implicit bias might be influencing my expectations of certain children? This one, I think the next slide does. No. Okay, so a few slides in the future, I have a link for you around this, but implicit bias is really those implicit ideas or ideas that we have that we're not even necessarily aware that we have, but they're expectations of how we expect a child or a person to act based on our assumptions. We're not usually aware of these things, but you can be aware of them. So looking at the places that were different or similar are really important. Even if you have 100 similarities with the family, it doesn't mean that you know what their experience is. And that's the same thing around differences. You can be completely different from that family. That doesn't mean that you can't understand what their experience is and create an inclusive environment for them. So we want to practice this self-reflection so that we can be aware of the places that these things are easy for us and where are the places that it's hard for us to create a welcoming space for everyone. Okay, so this one is the one around the implicit bias. This is an image that I got from Walter Gilliam, and you can access these online because each of these is a link. But learning about your own bias, the reason I like this image is because your bias is something that either someone has to tell you or you have to look in the mirror and find out that you have it. So it's similar to like having something in your teeth. Someone needs to say, hey, you're kind of doing this thing, or you need to self-reflect and look in the mirror and notice that you have something in your teeth. You don't know unless someone tells you or you look at it yourself. So this link here will take you to a project from Harvard that has a list of, it keeps growing every time I look at it, but it's, I think when I put it on here, it was maybe 50 different kinds of bias that you hold, and it kind of tricks your brain into helping you to see, like, do I have a bias towards or against older people or certain body types or certain races, certain sexes, certain genders. And taking these tests, you can take them online and you can see what the answers are, and it kind of shows you a little bit of where do you hold these bias. So it's really helpful and often very surprising. So don't do like 20 in one sitting because you probably won't like yourself after. It's really hard. The next one is about implicit bias in preschools. And Walter Gilliam did some research around implicit bias, and he set up a table with 4 children. It was a black child, a black boy, a white boy, a black girl, and a white girl. And he asked preschool teachers to look at the table and tell him where the behavioral concerns are. Where are they anticipating something will come up? Where would they intervene first? And what he was actually doing was tracking their eyes to see who are the teachers paying the most attention to, so that they could find out, is there a bias in preschool teachers towards certain children misbehaving rather than other children? If you look at the research from it, the gaze of the teachers is like in these little black dots. You almost cannot see the black boy in the picture because the teachers were all looking at him for the problems to come up in the classroom. So there's a lot of research around how our implicit bias shows up in a preschool classroom and how we expect certain things from certain children. And that's why being aware of your bias can really help you to create a more inclusive classroom, because you might be doing things that you don't even realize that you're doing. And being aware of this can help you to make your classroom more welcoming for all of the children. The practicing your feelings, there's also a lot of research that says that mindfulness can help you be aware of what's happening for you in the moment, but also can reduce some of these implicit bias showing up in the classroom. And this link will take you to a place that kind of walks you through a couple of different ways to practice that. And then the final link is about the tenets, where you can go and find out more about the tenets, and there's a bunch of articles and a link to the Tenets Initiative. And that sort of wraps us up for all of those pieces.